Let's get back to looking at the US Championship. I've been rather distracted by events elsewhere. And this was the pick of the games in round 8. Fabiano Caruana leading the tournament, playing white against Sam Shankland. This is such an exciting game. And I think in many ways really instructive. It's very subtle, it's very brutal at times. There's so much going on here. Okay, so let's crack on. Caruana opens with e4. That's really his favourite move. The one he's played the most anyway. And it's a gioco piano. So as I've mentioned many times in my videos, that these days the fashion is to play the gioco piano at these highest levels because a lot of the Spanish variations have been played out and they can fizzle to a draw. Whereas the gioco piano is more subtle. Well, as the name suggests, it's quiet play. It's subtle. And the move order is varied, but really significant, as we're about to see. Castles. And now, many players like to play c3 here. You're going to have to do that at some point to cover the d4 square and perhaps to give this bishop a route round. But Caruana plays h3. What? Well, as I'm sure you know, there is a special place in hell for players who play these little pawn moves at the side of the board. I normally say, what a waste of time. You should be doing something far more positive. This is a nervous move. So what is Fabiano Caruana doing playing this little pawn move h3? Well, it's all about move order. Now, many players do go c3 here. But I think the reason why he played h3 is because black here can break straight away with d5. And although there is some pressure on black's centre, it's been shown that actually black has pretty good chances to hold the balance after bishop g4. And in fact, of course, this is really strategically what black wants to do. Black wants to break in the middle and get some kind of space advantage. So I think h3 is directed against that. Now, how does h3 prevent d5? Well, it doesn't prevent d5. Black can still do it, but this position is far more problematic for black. You'll notice that there's no bishop g4 here, and there's immediately pressure on that e-pawn. And in practice, this has proved difficult for black. So that's the reason for this tricky move order. And in fact, it does transpose into, let's say, normal lines later or well-trodden paths. So c3, possibly looking to expand with b4 or d4. And a5, this is the approved method of playing these days, but you can go a6 as well. And Caruana plays rook e1. What about bishop g5? What about this pin that I've been discussing in so many games over the last few weeks? Well, in this case, particularly with the pawn on h3, I think it's possible to play g5 and play knight h5 and queen f6. And actually, I think black has pretty good play there. You'll see it's going to take a Herculean effort to bring that knight to f5. So, every position is a little bit different. Rook e1, normal move. So this is where the rook wants to be. It's directed against a later d5, and it also potentially makes room for that knight to swing around. h6, so now black thinks, right, better stop it. It's going to be an issue at some point. Knight d2. And bishop e6, bishop b5 has been a very popular continuation, but a4 from Sam Shankland. Now, Sam was playing his moves very quickly. He is renowned as an openings expert. So very often you see in his games that he's playing his first moves really quickly. But Caruana not fazed by a4, as been seen before. Bishop b5 anyway. Bishop d7. Now, here's an interesting moment. You might think, well, why can't white just grab the pawn. Well, in fact, black just gets a fantastic attack after this. You just ditch the exchange, but black's minor pieces are so powerful here. So this is a game, actually a game of Ray Robson playing black. And after this, f5, you can see that those bishops are absolutely flying. And this knight is going to land probably here. This rook is looking good. Those bishops are incredible. All black's pieces playing wonderful initiative, and Ray Robson won very quickly. That's why you don't take here, but Fabi knew that. He just continued to drift the knight round to the king side. Knight e7. So Shankland wants to exchange these bishops to relieve a bit of the pressure, and that defends this pawn. So bishop takes, queen takes, and knight g3. So everyone's happy. Shankland has managed to exchange the bishops, takes a bit of pressure off, and Caruana has floated the knight round to the king side. So we know that that outpost square is on f5 is incredibly incredibly important for white. But at the moment, that knight on e7 is doing a very good job in covering. Now, because white has securely protected e4, and the knight stands here as well, blocking the e-file, then d4 starts to look like quite a serious move. So bishop b6 just preempts that. And instead of going for d4, Caruana went back to this plan of occupying f5. Moving the knight also makes room for the queen as well, a very natural square to land on f3. Well, in this position, I think maybe a prudent move is rook e8. It's very often a nice move in this position to support this e-pawn, perhaps later on d5, but also freeze that square. A knight might end up there. But Shankland played d5, and I find that a very risky move. Now, Sam is an ambitious player, which is great. You know, it has brought him great rewards in the past. He's a former US champion, of course. But I find that a really destabilising move. Because after the exchange, yes, in some ways it's positionally desirable. You get through to this pawn. You have a slight space advantage. But actually, it means this is vulnerable. The knight is also standing on the e-file with the rook on e1. That's tricky. And this knight can hop into f5. So d4 played... well, actually, Caruana had a big think before he took on d5, but he played d4 very quickly. This is extremely awkward. So this hasn't solved all black's problems. Shankland played the knight c6, which feels like a very natural move to take the knight away from the e-file and put a bit more pressure here. Perhaps he was relying on that move. This move, knight hf5 looks quite scary to me. This also looks incredibly dangerous. This is the move that Caruana played. Of course, he wants to bring his queen over into the danger zone. And look at that bishop on c1. I've noticed this quite often, that a lot of club players like to develop that queen's bishop very quickly. But if you look in the Giocopiano or the Spanish, very often that bishop is simply well placed on c1, on its starting square. It's away from these files, and it's already looking at, well, in this case, h6, sometimes g5. Yes, it would be nice to bring this rook into play, but actually there's no need to hurry with the development of the queen's bishop. And in this case, it's already looking really good. For example, if black were to exchange here, then bishop h6, as a developing move, the first move of the bishop, it's rather strong. You know, this is already a fantastic attack for white. So that's the idea behind knight h5, to bring the queen in, and then the bishop can join the fun. Already a really tricky position. My computer thinks that black is still okay here if black finds this move, queen e6, which I find really counterintuitive, to put the queen on the same line as the rook. And even then, it's incredibly complex. But, okay, queen d8 played by Shankland. So the queen protects the knight. And knight f5. And this is looking really, really dangerous. So there's a threat to take on g7. So knight takes, queen takes. The queen is now in the danger zone around the king. And wow, look at that knight. Kasparov's favourite piece, the knight on f5 when the king is on g8. And with that bishop ready to crash in as well. And don't forget that rook. This is so dangerous. Queen f6. Well, what about bishop h6 immediately? Isn't this winning for white? Must be. The problem is if you take here, g6 turns the tables. And actually, black is doing well there. So what did Caruana play? Well, you need more firepower. Rook e4. Wow, Caruana must have thought, this is just crushing. That bishop is waiting in the wings still. You know, one of these is looking really dangerous. And with the rook coming over as well. Well, let's have a quick look. What about pawn takes pawn? Rook g4. Very simple. Threatening to take here. And if g6, queen takes h6 and rook h4. It's that simple. What does black do? Well, queen g6 played by Shankland. Of course, he's desperate to exchange queens. An exchange of queens would actually open up the f-file. And in combination with the bishop, that looks actually fine for black. But of course, you keep the queens on the board and maintain the threats here. Rook g4, among others, is on the cards. Shankland took on d4. There isn't really much better here. And knight h6 and rook g4, winning the queen. Looks like a winning position for white, doesn't it? King h7. And Caruana took the queen, of course. Material situation, rook and knight against the queen. Pawns level. But funny enough, now that bishop, well, the bishop hasn't developed, there's a little bit of a problem. That rook needs to enter the game. If the rook was standing on e1, then white would just be winning. Caruana played queen g4 here, which is a good move. It looks like the most natural move. You're keeping the queen active. My computer suggests the most incredible continuation. And I'd like to show you this, because I find it really interesting. Queen g4 is natural, and it was played, and it's a good move. My computer likes queen d3. So why does it like this move? Well, after rook a d8, which seems very natural as well, to bring the rook into the game, and actually white has to be incredibly careful here. White then plays queen d2. Making use of that bishop on c1, incredibly. Threatening to take on h6. And g5 is really the only sensible defence. In this case, the king has opened up. And after this, you still need to tread incredibly carefully. King h1, that avoids the tactics here. Let's say king g8. What white wants to do is give a check and play bishop e3. And then you're absolutely fine. After this. And then queen b4. So you're still ready to play bishop e3. And after rook takes, bishop e3, the bishop finally comes into the game, and then bishop g1. The king is absolutely secure, and then the rook is ready to join the action, and that should be winning because black's king is actually really exposed. I mean, it's an incredible line, but I do love this maneuver. Queen d3 and queen d2, that is phenomenal. course, impossible to see. And of course, every time, you're going to play the most natural move, Queen G4 in the position. And it is a good move. And Fabiano thought for about a minute over this. Rook E8 looks like a good move, activating. So this is very, very dangerous. Dangerous for white, dangerous for both sides. Caruana took on D4. In fact, Queen H4 is the move. This is the best move. I would say, you know, you need incredibly strong nerves to play this. Threatening here, and if H5, Queen G5, it's actually the same idea. You want to bring the queen in on H6, supported by that bishop. And after a check, it's really difficult for black. The rook comes back to defend G6, and then bishop D2. And slowly but surely, white is untangling here. And Queen H6 is about to happen. This rook is about to enter the game somewhere. And the king is just about secure enough on H2. But Caruana played pawn takes pawn. I think he was looking to get in bishop H3. But excuse me, bishop E3. A check on E1. King H2. And I suspect that it was this next move that Caruana had underestimated. It's looking good for white. White is actually threatening bishop H6. Unmasking this rook and attacking this one. But Sam found a great move. Rook F5, and that blocks out the queen just for a moment. Also prevents that tactic. And, well, black is okay here, basically, because there are problems here. It's such a tricky position. Caruana played Queen H4, threatening, of course, here. H5. And you can mess around with B4 here and try to untangle, but it's rather fraught. And Caruana thought for a little bit and basically forced a draw. He played bishop E3, allowing that rook to be taken. Now, it looks as though black is now winning with 2 rooks and a knight against the queen. But Caruana had thought this through, and he realised that G4 just stirs things up enough to force a draw. So while this rook is way across the other side of the board, as well as these pieces as well, these rooks are split, and that gives enough for white to mount an attack. So for example, well, this is the game. Rook F7 takes on H5, and perhaps it's not surprising that with the exposed king and the potential danger of queen and bishop that the game now ends in a draw. I mean, black even has to be a little bit careful. So, you know, if king F8, then the bishop enters the game. This is still a draw if black plays correctly. You can lose with king E8, and that'll be mate. But this is still actually a draw. But Shankland played rook G7, and well, this basically just acquiesces to the draw. Of course, white can repeat straight away. Caruana was just pushing things a little bit. You know, perhaps he's hoping for rook G6, H4, then it gets tricky again. But no, Shankland realised that he shouldn't mess around here. And that was that. Draw by perpetual check or repetition or whatever you want to call it. A fantastic game. Shankland was really on the edge there. But Sam the man pulled it out the bag, found some amazing defensive moves, threw some sand in his opponent's face, and moves like rook F5, absolutely superb. And even back here, you know, in this position, once the rook comes up, I mean, it looks to me as though black is completely lost. Black is lost. But Sam found some amazing resources here to keep things as complicated as possible and managed to hold the draw. Caruana came so close there. Really interesting. Well, that was quite a round, actually. Of course, Hans Niemann was chasing and trying to catch up with Caruana. He was just behind, but hang on, let's go to this position. This was Ray Robson against Hans Niemann. And after this, well, we could be heading for a draw. Complicated position. But Niemann played Queen A3. He declined a repetition. Whether Ray Robson would have gone for the repetition is another matter, but Niemann always pressing, didn't want to go for that, and his queen got trapped. Absolute disaster. Nowhere for the queen to go, and after bishop a4, that didn't help either. Attacks the queen, but the queen just moved. And that was the end of the story. The queen has nowhere to go. So that puts a dent into Niemann's ambitions. However, it's still unbelievably close. After 8 rounds, Caruana is a point ahead with 5.5. 4 players on 4.5. Wesley So, Dominguez, Niemann and Mishra. It's looking really tight, but Caruana out ahead. But very exciting. Round 9 tonight. Is it tonight? I think it's tonight. No. Rest day today. It's tomorrow night. It's Sunday night. Sunday night in Europe. It's Niemann against Caruana in round 9. Niemann, Caruana, round 9. That is going to be a huge game. Watch out for that. There's so much going on at the moment. There's the Qatar Masters and all the drama there with Caruana and Nakamura and, well, lots of young pretenders. You know, the Indian kids, Abdusatorov. Really exciting tournament. What else is there? Well, there's the Rugby World Cup quarterfinals going on this weekend. Can't miss those. There's India-Pakistan in the cricket. It's all happening. And, oh, by the way, I want to have a shout out. Hi to all those I met in Crete last week. It was really good to meet you. And, well, hopefully keep on watching the channel and maybe see you in Kos next May. There's so much going on. Oh, yeah, the other thing is I have 4 students who are playing in the Chess Punks tournament on chess.com that takes place next weekend. And some of those lessons are being live streamed, so look out for those as well. Phew!